Hey everybody, this is Matt Krell from the Circle Dwellers podcast. This is the last of a series of interviews we did as part of our annual History Night, where we remember the events of our community's founding and how God led us through that time. This interview is with my sister-in-law, Cate Krell. Cate used to be a member of another Christian community that sadly has largely fallen apart. How she came here is an amazing testimony to God's faithfulness. Tim and I will be back next week with our regularly scheduled podcast episodes where we talk about Christian community. But until then, please enjoy the video.
All right, so we're back from a short little break, and we have my beautiful, wonderful wife here. She's a relatively new addition to the community, but it's still been, it's remarkable. It's been 7 years.
12 years.
Well, 7 years since.
Bloody-dum.
I'm so much shame. No, I meant 7 years since we were married, right? 12 years since you
12 years
came,
and a few
but
days.
it's been 7 years since you became a member here, right? I guess because you became a member shortly
That's right.
before we got married. Yeah.
Right.
So same question as I asked Uncle Jared and Uncle John. How did you even end up here? I know, by the way. I do know how she did.
My story feels hard to make concise, but I grew up in an intentional Christian community in the middle of the country, and it was pretty much the best childhood a kid could have. It was an amazing experience and a gift I will always be grateful for. I took a very long time to become a member there because there was a certain way of doing things. There was a few regulations and things I just couldn't put my seal on. So in good conscience, I held out, fully participating. But for a long time, I just thought that was something, I could be okay with, was just hanging on in the middle ground. And finally, I was given to see that it wasn't the structure or the organization I was committing to, it was the people. And when that happened, I found my identity. I found, this is my people. I love these people. I want to be part of them for the rest of my life. And so that's what I was thinking was going to happen. And in 2010, a very abrupt and painful church split happened in my community. And in a course of, it was over 2 years for the final trickle down to happen, but it would actually happened, I'd say 3 months to 6 months. The majority of all my friends took off. And was really unexpected. And anyway, as you can see, there's still a little bit of trauma there, I guess, just thinking about how differently things went from what we had all thought. And anyway, I was just in shock for quite a long time, longer than I knew. I carried on, and I felt like I didn't really have a reason myself to leave at that point, but I was very unhappy. And I was just waiting on God. And I had friends in this community. I had written to Sarah and Kelsey, Kelsey in particular, for 20 years. We had been pen pals. I don't know how many people know that, but 20 years. Was a long time. And Timothy, he's younger than I am, so we had written for less time and very infrequently, but I had some good friends here, and little did I know, everyone here was very concerned about me and what was happening. And when I reached out, just kind of waving hi in the midst of all the chaos, I got such a concerned response that I was overwhelmed, because I felt very alone and very uncared for, and just as I said, shell-shocked. And I was so overcome by the kindness and the concern that was sent my way. Like, Kate, how are you doing? We're so concerned about you. We're praying for you. Tell us how things are. That really moved me. And so I started conversing with Timothy mostly, and as we developed, our friendship grew. We were talking more and more frequently, and I wanted to leave my community at this point. I really wanted to go, and I was watching all the things that my friends who had left were getting involved in. They're getting their cars, they were starting businesses, they were moving to different states. There was a whole bunch going on, and I started to want that. I literally was telling myself, okay, I gave community everything I had. I think it's my time to go do what the rest of the world thinks is normal, and I'm looking forward to this. So that was going on in the back of my head as I was chatting with Timothy, and he was excitedly telling me more and more about what was going on here. And I remember one conversation where I was sitting there, and the enthusiasm and the anointing of the descriptions of what God was doing came into the room, and I felt a weight, and I reluctantly realized that God was speaking to me again about community, and I didn't want to hear it. And so I said, I think I need to leave this chat right now. It was really heavy, and I thought, gosh, I thought I was done with this. And yet I was faced with the choice of whether or not I was going to listen to what I felt God was speaking. So I went out eventually through a series of small miracles. God really smoothed a path before me, and I did end up leaving it all. God just went before me, and everything was kind of in his hands, and the timing was right, and I left, and I went out and spent some time with my family in California, and then I called and asked if I could come out here for just a few months. And I was again treated with great kindness, and the school year, the training is a full school year, but I was told, we'll make an exception. We will abridge the training, and yes, you can come for 3 months. That'll work. So I came out, and immediately was struck by so many things that were different beneath the surface from the way I'd grown up. Fundamental things, the deportment of people toward one another, the principles of operation, the communication. There were so many things that were different even on the surface, since I too had come from a community that shared goods and had common meals and worked together very well and had wonderful music and song and fun. It looked the same on the surface, but underneath there were so many things that were different. And I roomed with Sarah, who was one of God's great gifts to me. And as I was working my way through getting a job and joining in with the life here and adjusting to the nuances that were different, I realized via Jared, who was, we were working one day washing windows together, and we were chatting in the car, and he said, Kate, you're trying to decide about community, but community isn't a thing you decide about. It's people. It's people. So the old lesson again. And you can't, make a choice about people and get to know them in 3 months. That's ridiculous. So I said, yeah, it's true. Okay, 3 months is not really smart. So stayed on longer, and there were a lot of things for me to unlearn. And I was the journey was very interesting and very painful in some ways. I was dealing with a lot of shock still, as I said, and different ways of operating, but all good. I was confronted all the time by different ways of doing things that were wholesome, and I found myself getting healed, getting loved. But there were a bunch of things that I was still clinging on to. And I'm going on long, but I'll wrap it up here. So when the time came for me to fish or cut bait, I was really seeking God. There were a few things that I was in a terrible quandary about, most of them theological, and hiding, and just so much fear in me. And the Lord came through in various ways, but one of the most powerful things that he said to me was through a sermon that I was listening to. And the preacher was telling the story of Ruth. And you all know the story of Ruth, but he said, when you find your family, you find your destiny. And that was it. I was answered, because my other family had, up and left. And God had led me to this family, and I had been loved and held, and yet there's so many things that I could say about the loving that was tough. The loving here was so different from my previous family, because in the community I was in before, it was easy to get in and extremely hard to get out. And here, it felt like it was hard to get in, because people wanted you to be so sure you were doing what God wanted you to do. There was the farthest thing from pressure. It was almost pressure the opposite way. It was, are you sure? And are you hearing from God? And why? And why do you think that he wants you here? And it was just it was complete setting me free to do whatever I wanted to do, as long as I was hearing from God. So yeah, through that word and through the love of the people here that I experienced, I realized I had found my family. I had found my new family, and I wanted to be here.
Mm-hmm. So I just like to reflect on and ask you about. So obviously there's still hurt there of having come from being in community, and those relationships falling apart, or your community breaking apart. That's when you're close to people. We've seen there's so much goodness that can come from that, but it also opens you up to a world of hurt and potential pain. And you experienced a lot of that pain. Why did you choose to put yourself in the situation, of potentially being that close again to people? Because I think a lot of people would look at that as, oh, you're in this community and it failed, or it didn't work out or something, and it caused you pain. Why did it seem worth it to you to say, well, I'm going to go back into that again. I'm going to be that vulnerable with people again?
Several answers, but the most important one is what I've already heard expressed tonight. God has to become the will of God. God himself has to become your raison d'etre, your reason for being, and what he says and what he directs is what you want, finally. And it takes, you've heard all the stories of yielding the most precious thing. Throughout these studies that I did, the wonderful program that we are improving on all the time, there were many, many conversions that had to happen. And the biggest conversion that I went through was, and this is rather shocking because I did grow up in intentional community. I did grow up with people who loved me and I loved, but I still saw salvation the way that I think most of the church sees it, which is me and God, me and Jesus, vertical, and the people of God are a nice addendum. And they're a byproduct. They're, a lovely part of the symphony or the tapestry or whatever you want to say. I didn't realize that God saves us in the body, that God wants to use his people to channel his love, to channel his transformative power. He wants to speak to us through people. He wants to provide for us through people. He wants us to become little Christ walking around. And that really is salvation. And that is, I'm still being converted to that because as I've heard Butch say many times, we're pickled in the Enlightenment thinking of individualism.
Mm-hmm.
We do not really, really deep down think we need the body of Christ. We just think we need Jesus alone. And in one sense, of course, that's true. But that's not the way he wants to preach, as Dad was saying. That's not the way he wants us to preach by our love for one another.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter the pain, no matter, it is painful sometimes, but it's, as Jared was just saying, it's also wonderful and a privilege and remarkable and great.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, darling.
You know, what's interesting about Cate coming, of course, she's added to our community too, because she has this other DNA, so to say,
Mm-hmm.
of another community, and it's transformed us in many ways, and
Mm-hmm.
her distinctiveness is added to our, you know.
I don't know if that's exactly
Trek
the parallel we
Borg or
want to draw there, but
No, but because the community is nothing apart from the people.
Mm-hmm.
There is no community, this other thing.
Yeah,
There's
amen.
only us. And the truth is that we are enacting the Trinitarian love of God.
Amen.
Mhm.
That's it.
And because God is a Trinity, we, as Ephesians 5:1 and 2 says, be imitators of God as beloved children and walk in love. We live out the Trinitarian dance in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really no way to reflect the nature of God except through the church.
Mm-hmm.
And we change each other. And the Spirit of God moves in and through us. And so as Cate joins our community, we've become a different people
Mm-hmm.
because of this other sister who now is part of God's will of our life.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. So, baby, what's one of your fondest memories of community?
This one
If
is...
you don't say our wedding.
Okay, this is going to be unlike anything anyone ever shares, but this happened at one of our retreats. As all of you know, of course, we go to the Poconos, or we used to go to the Poconos every year in February for a few days of just hanging out, and talking and fellowshipping and doing different things and meeting. So I was, I think this may have been the first retreat I was here. If not, it was early. And I was just a newbie and still creeping around, observing everything and all the interactions. And Jared, you're figuring a lot in this. Jared and Betty were in the kitchen, and they were talking about growing old and what it's going to be like when everybody's old. And they were like doubled over talking about peeing on the couch together. And I was so attracted. Just the love and the commitment that was embodied in that image. No, I'm serious. Like I was just watching that, and I could see this. They're in it for the long haul. Like, yeah, that was a hilarious picture of my mind. But what stuck out to me was they were totally counting on being together when they either went senile or whatever.
Incontinent.
Yeah, and I marveled. I marveled at that, and I wanted that. So that's one of my favorite memories.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, that's. I think that's where we're gonna end on that note. I think that's our sign to wrap up. This has been a wonderful history night, and it's been so wonderful getting to hear from you, Dad, and you, Uncle Butch, and Uncle Jared, and Uncle John. Just all this richness that we have. It's so easy to take it for granted and to just you know, it's your next daily routine of the next thing. You get up, go to work, do the thing, and we have so many wonderful structures in place to help fend off that malaise that Satan ever wants to bring in of just, okay, this is just another day. But having times like this to be able to hear that and to hear the wisdom, the experience, and the goodness, recount the victories that we've had through the Lord, how he's delivered us, how he's guided us over these years. I just don't think we can hear it enough, and I'm just so grateful for you all sharing that and reminding us once again of where God has brought us and where he will lead us to.